You would have flipped the switch. Yes, you. Not the version of you that imagines being brave. The real one, sitting in a small room, sweating, hearing a stranger scream behind a wall. You would have kept going. This is not an insult. It is a fact proven again and again, in lab after lab, decade after decade. And once you understand why, you will never trust your own obedience the same way again. Think about the last time someone in a uniform, a badge, a lab coat, or a title told you what to do. Did you question it? Or did something in your chest simply go quiet and your body just complied? That quiet is not weakness, it is wiring. Deep in the architecture of the human brain sits a default setting installed long before you were born, one built for survival in tribes, hierarchies, and chains of command. That setting is simple. When someone above you speaks with authority, your instinct is to obey first and think second. In 1961, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram wanted to understand how ordinary people had participated in atrocities during the Second World War. He built an experiment at Yale University. Volunteers were told to deliver electric shocks to another person every time that person answered a question wrong. The shocks were fake. The screams were recorded. But the volunteers did not know that. They believed they were causing real pain to a real stranger. A man in a lab coat stood nearby. He did not threaten. He did not yell. He simply said 4 sentences, calmly, again and again. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolute that you continue. You have no other choice but to continue. Over 60% of participants delivered what they believed was a lethal shock, simply because a calm voice in a lab coat told them it was necessary. This is the authority trap. It does not work through force. It works through permission. The moment someone in a position of perceived power gives you the script for harm, that script becomes oddly easy to follow, because somewhere in your mind a switch flips, and you are no longer fully responsible. You become a conduit. The decision feels like it belongs to someone else. Notice the symbols of authority around you right now: a white coat, a police uniform, a name tag that says doctor, officer, manager, professor, a confident tone of voice, a title on an email signature. None of these things prove competence. None of them prove honesty. They are simply costumes that your brain has been trained to bow toward, automatically, instantly, without an audit. In 1973, psychologist Philip Zimbardo ran a different experiment at Stanford University. He assigned ordinary students to play either prisoners or guards inside a simulated prison. Within days, the guards began humiliating the prisoners, not because they were cruel people, because the role itself, combined with the perceived authority of the experiment, rewired their behavior almost overnight. The uniform did the thinking. The role did the obeying. This is what happens when authority structures override individual judgment, even among people who believe they would never behave that way. Now picture how this plays out in your daily life, far away from any laboratory. A manager raises their voice in a meeting, and the room goes silent, even when the manager is wrong. A doctor speaks quickly and confidently, and the patient stops asking questions, even when something feels off. An online figure with a blue checkmark and a confident tone makes a claim, and thousands share it instantly, without checking a single source. Authority does not need to be correct to be obeyed. It only needs to sound certain. This is how it is used against you. Marketers borrow the symbols of authority to sell products you do not need. A man in a white coat sells supplements. A chart full of numbers sells a financial scheme. A confident voice with no credentials still gets treated like an expert, because confidence itself mimics authority, and your brain cannot always tell the difference between real expertise and a convincing performance of it. Scammers use this trap with surgical precision. A phone call claims to be from a government agency. A voice says you must comply immediately or face serious consequences. Panic narrows your thinking, authority overrides your doubt, and your hand moves toward your wallet before your mind has time to catch up. Psychologist Robert Cialdini studied this exact mechanism for decades and found that authority is one of the most powerful levers of human persuasion, more powerful than logic, more powerful than evidence, sometimes more powerful than self-preservation itself. You might think you are immune. Most people do. But immunity is not built through confidence. It is built through awareness, repeated and deliberate, until the pattern becomes visible the moment it appears. So here is how the trap is escaped. The first step is recognizing the costume. When you feel that quiet, automatic urge to comply, pause and ask what symbol triggered it. A title, a uniform, a tone, a platform. Name the costume out loud in your mind, and the spell weakens immediately, because authority depends on being invisible to work. The second step is separating authority from accuracy. A person can hold real power and still be wrong. A title proves position, not truth. Ask yourself a simple question before complying with anything important. What evidence exists here, independent of who is speaking? If the answer is none, your compliance is based on costume, not content. The third step is creating a pause before obedience. Milgram's experiment showed that the people who eventually refused to continue were not braver by nature. They simply paused longer, questioned earlier, and gave themselves permission to doubt before their hand moved. A few seconds of hesitation is often the entire difference between blind obedience and conscious choice. The fourth step is remembering that legitimate authority welcomes questions, while manipulative authority punishes them. A real expert explains their reasoning. A real institution tolerates scrutiny. If a voice grows hostile the moment you ask why, that hostility is information. It tells you the power being used is performance, not substance. This does not mean rejecting every doctor, every leader, every expert who has earned trust through real evidence. It means refusing to let a costume replace your own judgment. Authority can guide you. It should never replace the part of your mind that is allowed to ask why. So the next time a calm voice tells you to continue, and something in your chest goes quiet, do not let that silence make the decision for you. Pause. Ask what evidence exists beneath the costume, because you would have flipped the switch. But now you know exactly why, and that knowledge is the only thing standing between you and the next quiet, obedient yes.